Hello everyone, welcome back. You're watching Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 178. I'm Anemius, and today we're looking at the Millennium Falcon. It's basically done as far as I'm going to do it. The blueprint is available now on the workshop, the Steam workshop. The link will be in the information box below the video. If you're interested, you want to take a look, you want to mess around with it. There are certain things that I left specifically incomplete because there was a decision that had to be made about how a person wanted to approach it. And I didn't think that it would be the best choice for me to make that decision for other people and leave them with something that they have to tear down if they aren't happy with it, if they would rather go in a different direction. So if you've been following this series, you know that this ship was actually started as that one over there, the saucer vessel, and I realized that we were in pretty good shape with that hull to make some modifications and turn it into a Millennium Falcon. That was kind of the entire thought process. As a result, it ended up being a capital vessel, which had certain things that wouldn't work because it was a capital vessel, and the other alternative, which would have been to make it a small vessel, would have allowed us to bypass some of the issues that we had as a capital vessel, primarily the scaling. But we wouldn't have been able to have turrets on it. Everything would have had to have been a fixed barrel kind of weapon, which isn't quite as fun, especially when it would have been a very large, small vessel. So you lose that benefit of the ship being able to defend itself to some extent on the move if you had to be facing in a particular direction all the time in order to hit anything. That having been said, I'm pretty happy with the way that it turned out, given the tools that we have access to in a voxel kind of universe like this. And what we had to try and accomplish with them. You can see the exterior. If you saw the last episode, not a lot has changed in the exterior since then. It's still very similar to what it was. And the idea here was, the more I tried to add, the more it ended up just looking sort of cluttered and wrong. So I decided to keep it a little bit on the minimalistic sort of side. And again, it's one of those things, if you want to make modifications to it, add more, change the way things are laid out, you can do that. It's not that big of a deal. One thing that I did change is I switched out the artillery turret for a plasma cannon because it seemed a little bit more fitting to have, first of all, faster projectiles, and also the Millennium Falcon never had artillery. It was lasers, really, for the most part, and concussion missiles in the front, which we have. This back end here, I thought about filling it in a little bit more with equipment-looking stuff, junk, basically. And I decided that ultimately it's one of those things, again, where you start adding stuff and it just looks awful. Or you start adding stuff and it looks awful and you're really, really happy about it. So, I mean, whatever you decide to do with your Millennium Falcon is your business. I specifically chose not to fill it in this time around. I did add these blocks here that kind of indicate to some extent where the majority of the equipment would be. Specifically this little wedge shaped area in here and a little bit up to the back end here, all the way around to the other line. Sort of like that, fill in towards all this stuff in here. One thing that I did add are these fins on the back. They're not like rudders. They're not used, you don't, wiggle them back and forth to turn the ship, but I think they're part of the propulsion. I know that. I can't remember off the top of my head if they were part of the light speed drive, the hyperdrive, or if they were part of something else maneuvering. I don't know. We've got all the thrusters on the back that glow blue, pretty close to the way the Millennium Falcon would do. In fact, let's just kind of sneak in over here. Turn it on. Kind of close. Not, I mean, it could be better, but it could also be a lot worse. I noticed as I came over here and I hit the button for the power, these have light bars on them. I just noticed that for the very first time. There are light bars on these guys. That is kind of cool. Anyway, so you get the general idea how that sort of works and fits together. And I also put lights on top of these so that in dark scenarios you'd have a little bit of lighting, little spot lighting on the back. Just to kind of add a little bit of visual interest. The other area where I spent a fair bit of time since what I showed you in the last episode was the underside. I've got the landing gears are now a little bit closer to where they would be on an authentic Millennium Falcon, and also the size that they would be. The ones in the back being sort of the double, and then the ones in the front being the individual, and there's 3 in the front. The other thing that I did was a little bit of hull modification to add some of the texture and some of the detail that you would have on the, on an authentic Millennium Falcon. Not necessarily precisely the way that it would be presented on the legit version, but enough that I think it does a fairly good job of illustrating how it would be set up. We've got a number of different shapes, and we've got round things and things going around things, and we've got enough detail, I think, to make it a little bit more interesting than just a flat underside, which is what I was concerned would happen, which is what I knew would happen if I didn't do anything on the underside at all. It's got a pulse laser around here. This is sort of like the one that's supposed to be reminiscent or be the one that is used. It pops down and shoots stormtroopers when they're trying to get out of Tatooine in the movie. That's sort of like this one. The placement might not be exactly precise. In fact, it may even supposed to be on the other side of the ship. But I think this is pretty close to correct. And then I put another plasma cannon on the underside here because there was a turret on the underside as well. So we've got the gun representation is pretty reasonable, I think, relative to the legitimate Falcon. And then, of course, we've got the concussion missiles up here. We'll call them concussion missiles. They're their Empyrion missiles. Not concussion, but you get the idea. The other thing that I wanted to kind of nail down was this ramp situation. It's almost an iconic sort of thing. There are scenes where you see people getting into the Millennium Falcon from a ramp that's kind of close to the outer perimeter under the airlock, which is now thrusters. And see, this is one of those things with the scaling, because these tubes where the airlocks are, it's supposed to be, this top side is a little bit proud of the surface, the way it is here, and then the underside is actually supposed to be like that here, and the ramp actually lowers from the underside of the tube. In a capital vessel, it just doesn't work out that way. And in this case, I decided to capitalize on it as an opportunity to get some extra thrusters in place, even if it meant that the end result wouldn't be particularly authentic. And you can see we've got a door here, which is nice for the airlock kind of thing. And then we start working around to the inside. Now this is where it started to get a little bit iffy, because we've got these walls that in many places, looking around the interior of the Millennium Falcon, you're walking through the halls, and they've got like cushions all around the walls, kind of yellowish, filthy looking cushions. And it makes sense. If you're flying around in space in a ship that's known to get shot at and bounced off asteroids and all the other things that happen to the Millennium Falcon, you would be very appreciative, I think, if the walls were a little bit softer than steel when you're being thrown around in them. In order to get that kind of detail, the way that they're set up in the actual, the authentic version of the ship is just impossible with the blocks that we're given, because they're small individual cushions. And I couldn't even find a way to draw lines in between the stuff that was there. So I just set it up to look like as close to the cushioned walls as I could. Not all of the walls are cushioned, so I didn't try and make all of them cushioned. And then, of course, there's the door out the other side of the airlock. We've got a room here that's empty because I couldn't think of anything I wanted to put there. I should point out that there's no storage built into this ship yet, because it's up to, I think, the individual to decide where they want to put it. Do they want to put the storage in one of the rooms on the main deck? Do they want to have like a little smuggling section on a below decks area where they put all of their storage? Whatever they want to do for the RP or for the fun of it, that's a decision that they can make. But there's plenty of room in here for stuff. We've got this room back here, which is basically the engine room. In this case, it is a lot of thrusters, 3 lift and 3 descent thrusters. And then over here we have all of our generators. There's, how many did I put in here? Did I put 6 or 8? See, I don't even remember. Wait, that's not generators. This is generators. It's so much easier to see. So there's 8 generators here cranking away, producing all the power that you could need. And A lot of glass. Keep you from walking into the thrusters. That's part of the reason. I mean, for me, if I was doing this as a ship that was not the Millennium Falcon, somewhere in the back here is where I'd want to be putting some of the storage as well. But I chose just to leave this for the engine room, which is pretty authentic, I think. And then other people can decide what they want to do. This here is sort of like the main lounge, I guess you could call it, where you would be if you were, with Obi-Wan and Luke training him to use the droid with the lightsaber and getting zapped all the time. It would be in this room playing that 3D sort of holographic chess kind of game. That would be in this room. And then we've got some additional rooms back here, a little wee tiny room here and a room there. So again, these can be used for storage. They can be used for quarters. They can be used for whatever you want. Whatever your deal is, you can do it here. And then here's the other route back down to the other airlock. And then lastly, through this little narrow opening here, we have the cockpit. And this is like I was saying, the scale as a capital vessel for the Millennium Falcon is way off. Because if this was pretty much on scale, you would have the two seats for the pilot and the co-pilot would basically be taking up this whole area here and this whole area here. And from the outside, you would be able to look in from here and see details on the faces of the people in those two seats. And then there would be a wall sort of in the back end here with an exit, an opening of some sort to get to the other areas of the ship. And attached to each of those walls would be the passenger seats. They look like the seats for handicapped people and elderly on the bus, where you can lift them up and get them out of the way. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's the whole idea. On the original Millennium Falcon, they're just two little seats in the back, but still, from the outside, you would be able to see facial details on the people sitting in these seats, whereas with the scaling we have, you'd be lucky to see the people of any kind in the seats. So this is another area where I left it specifically plain. I thought about doing textures and things on the wall. I think the curve worked out all right, bringing it around to the hallway. But it's just one of those things where the height of the ship, in order to make the saucer section work and everything else work, makes it massive. It's absolutely massive in the interior. Basically, one person stands as high as this block, a little bit lower. So the ceiling in our Millennium Falcon is 18 feet, give or take, whereas the ceiling in the original is like 8 or 10. And I'm saying 18 feet is pretty generous, pretty conservative, I guess would be the word. Now, the underside, the underbelly of the beast, this is obviously where you can see all the fuel tanks, and they're deliberately in a place where you can see them, which I think is kind of fun, that you can see them through the grate on the floor. You can see a little bit of the generators and some thrusters, and then more fuel tanks, and then everything else is wide open for you to use however you see fit. So if you're really keen on doing the whole smuggler thing, you want to have storage containers under here, you want to do whatever you want to do, you can go for it. There's also the opportunity to have the access hatches where people are doing repairs and tools fall on their head and they scream, ow. All that stuff, you can find a place for it. I think they're actually, trying to think, they're near where I am now. I don't know exactly where. I could find out if I was looking at the schematic, obviously, but I'm not. So we're just kind of going from the hip. But I think you get the idea. Additionally, lights, something that you may wish to add, because I didn't do a lot of detailing with the lights inside. It was one of those things that wasn't really high on my list of things to take care of, but it wouldn't take much to light this. And do so in a way that you're happy with. You know, you get sort of a theme lighting going on, or a mood lighting, or whatever you want to call it. Entirely up to you how you want to go about that. So that's the Millennium Falcon. The build that sort of just jumped out at me, and I kind of dropped everything and started working on it. And it took quite a while, but it's done, and I'm happy it's done. And I hope you're happy it's done. And I hope you enjoy the blueprint. Do whatever you want with it. And the next build is a secret until the next episode when I show you what it is. It's behind that wall. It's not done yet, but it's very close. Just letting you know. that'll be the next episode. So if you want to be notified about the next and future videos in the series, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.